Hi, everyone. Welcome to WorksFest. Welcome to Financial Services, Winners and Losers in the Modern Data Stack. My name is Reece Bittner. I'm a client partner here at CloudWorks, and with me is Graham Lewis, also known as G. And
G'day.
he is our Chief Enthusiasm Battery. At CloudWorks, we do acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional custodians of our land, Australia. The Gadigal of the Eora Nation are the traditional custodians of this place we now call Sydney, and we're here to honour them, respect to the past, present, future traditional custodians and elders of this nation. So thank you very much.
We were joking just before, Reece, that if I get a fun title like Enthusiasm Battery, you should get a fun title as well. So I think the most dashing man in financial services. I think that is correct, right? You're
me.
pretty dashing.
I am extremely dashing, especially on a Monday. So, yeah, pleasure to be here with you, G, and look forward to conveying what we're doing in financial services. And this whole week we're here for WorksFest. So very exciting event, lots of fantastic content. And for our financial services viewers, we do have another session tomorrow around a fantastic customer, Brightside, talking through how they've sort of attacked their transformation and done a lot of fantastic work around claims. So if you can join at the end of the session, we'll be showing you a QR code, and we'd love for you to register and join some more sessions with us.
Fantastic.
All right, G.
Yeah, let's jump on in.
Love to jump into it, and I think we have lots of different customers with different varying maturities. Can you talk me through that a little bit more?
I would love to. Absolutely. Yeah, so folks, lovely to see you all here. If I look across over here, that's because my second screen's got all of my content, so that's what I'm looking at when I do that. Essentially, this session today, we're focused on the modern data stack, otherwise known as the MDS. We're going to talk about what it is, why it's incredibly valuable, especially in the Salesforce ecosystem, and we're going to talk about how it's useful across, exactly as you were saying, Reece, multiple different levels of maturity inside an organization. We have a view of what a perfect, rolled out, well-implemented modern data stack looks like, but that's not something you get to day one. And in fact, we wouldn't want it to be that way. The amount of effort and the amount of adoption that you need to drive, it's an iterative process. So what we've got here is effectively 4 major phases that we see just about all of our customers go through. Over the next few slides, we will go into more detail about what a modern data stack is, but this is actually a really good place to start. It's sort of the same thing you're going to find with virtually any data transformation or digital transformation. You want to start off with something that is a quick win, something that the organization will get benefit out of straight away so that you build up that internal momentum. Especially if you are the sponsor of a modern data stack project, you want some quick wins on the board so that the organization sees the value in it and continues investing the time and effort and money to progress down the maturity curve. Once you've got your quick wins in place, suddenly you've got some momentum building up. You get the foundation laid across the rest of the business. The foundation will be things along the lines of determining additional use cases, but also making sure that all of the various data sources that are going to play into your modern data stack are being connected into it correctly and in the appropriate way. What I mean there is either batch connections or stream connections. We'll come to that in a minute. Once you've got that then rolled out, you want to scale up. You've got the foundation in place. Now you want to roll that out everywhere, and you want to roll it out so that every part of the business is seeing those benefits. And then lastly, high performance. And this is really then an iterative step. You're likely then for the rest of time to be bouncing back and forth between phase 3 and phase 4. You're effectively going to be heading into a high performance moment, and then new technology is going to arrive. You're going to move back into scaling up again and then back into high performance. So it's really going to be an iterative process going forward. But let's jump in. All right. So modern data stack. Really, what it is a sequence of technologies that are designed to get your data from where it is to start with, all kinds of different data sources, into a place where it can be activated and mobilized. If we take a look at this example on the left-hand side, for example, you've got a replicate point, and that's where your information is being replicated from source data points into your data platform. The data platform is where you're storing and transforming data. That term transform, you'll probably hear me talk about it throughout the session, but effectively all transform means in the world of data is taking it from one state to another state that is more useful for the organization. So for example, let's say we're bringing in records about opportunity line items. So we might have at a base level millions of records of opportunity line items. We want to transform that into something useful. And so we might do something from perhaps, let's just add together all of the dollar values so that now we know this opportunity dollar value equals XYZ. That's a data transform. So inside your data platform, you're storing and transforming. From there, you're then going to push it into somewhere where you can mobilize and activate your data. In the past, this would have been thought of as a predictive model or a dashboard. Or if you're a little bit more savvy on, say, the marketing side of things, you might activate it via segmentation, creating a new campaign to send information out to your various customers and prospects. That's all activation. In here, what you can see on this example is that we've got two major streams of activation. There's everything Salesforce. Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Financial Cloud, everything. You can send the data there and get value out of it. And then, of course, you've got Tableau Cloud as well. Tableau Cloud is powerful because if we are really honest about it, Salesforce licenses can be expensive to roll out to every single person in your business. And maybe not every person in your business needs to log into Sales Cloud. Maybe some of them just need the data. And that's where Tableau Cloud comes into the mix. So you've got a more cost-effective way to get your data out to hundreds or even thousands of users. Let's jump through to the next slide here. This is a more rolled up view where we can really talk through why we think about something as a modern data stack rather than just a data stack. So again, it's summarized as those three main levels. You've got replicate, which is getting the data from one place to another. You've got transform, also that's your storage layer, but transform is turning the data into something that's useful. And then finally, mobilize. And again, in the previous slide, we called it mobilize and activate because it is activating your data, getting it used. Some of these icons here, I want to talk about them. Down the bottom there in replicate, you've got MuleSoft, the big M. Another product that we talk about in the replicate layer is something like Fivetran, for example. It's a product that's designed to connect data sources to a data warehouse. In the transform layer, we've got a couple of really big, important bits of software here. You've got on the left-hand side, Snowflake. It could equally be a Databricks or a Redshift or a GCP. It could be many different data layers, but what it's doing is the same thing. It's storing and transforming your data, getting it ready to be used. The other icon there, the purple icon with the dots surrounding it, that's the Data Cloud icon. Within the Salesforce environment, Data Cloud is your store and transform point. Essentially, one of the reasons why we've got Snowflake there sitting next to Data Cloud is because similarly to things like Databricks and hopefully very soon Redshift, there is a deep strategic connection between Salesforce and those other technologies, like, for example, Snowflake. And that's materialized in something called zero copy sharing. Technical term, all it really means is your data is getting from your data warehouse into Salesforce instantly without you needing to have a pipeline shipping it through. That's what that's doing for you. Up in the mobilized layer, you've got there Einstein. The entire Einstein layer of Salesforce can be mobilized from your data cloud environment. You've got Tableau. You've got CRM Analytics, fantastic tool for Salesforce users to mobilize and activate their data. And you've got basically anything inside the Salesforce stack is also being mobilized there.
Could you maybe, as a really quick summary, obviously a lot of customers have different technology stacks. You'd obviously have
Absolutely.
experience going in there, working how we can essentially make the most out of what they've already got
Yeah.
to get what they want to, where they want to get to.
Absolutely. So, for example, the way we work is that each of these layers are designed to be modular. And so you're not limited to just one technology. You could be using any kind of technology in any parts of these layers, and we can absolutely help you connect them together and get the information flowing into Salesforce. What I'd love to talk to you about here in particular is really what we're all here to talk about, which is the financial services side of things. When you've got, for example, potentially hundreds, thousands, even millions of trade records or investment records for a particular customer, storing that inside of Salesforce on a Salesforce object, that's going to cost you a huge amount. It's going to be highly performant, but it's going to cost you a huge amount. If instead you want to have that information in there, being able to relate it to a particular customer, but not have it cost the earth, that's where a modern data stack is going to come in. You're going to bring your data through from where it's sitting out there on any kind of data source you can imagine, and bring it through to a transform layer like Data Cloud. Within Data Cloud, you're then going to be able to assign it as what's called a unified customer profile. Effectively, everything about a customer linked to that customer in an incredibly performant and cost-effective way. From there, you can then bring it into Salesforce however you'd like and make use of it. Does that cover what you were thinking there, Reese?
Yeah, 100%, G. Yeah, thanks for
Awesome,
adding that.
awesome, awesome. Well, let's jump through to the next one. And realistically, I guess we've got a few slides here where we're really just talking about the journey of your data. Ultimately, this concept of the modern data stack is something that is somewhat manufactured. The modern data stack is the same as the previous data stack, which is the same as the data stack that came before that. The difference is some capabilities that are within it. But ultimately, what you're wanting to achieve is the same thing we've been trying to achieve with our data stack for the last 20, 30, 40 years, which is joining the dots. It's getting what you know to line up to what you're going to do next. When you've got a platform like Salesforce, for example, your users have access to a huge amount of functionality to be able to make decisions and then act on them. Cases, emails, records, reaching out to people, emails, marketing, hyper-personalization. It's all possible in there. And ultimately, that's what the modern data stack is designed to do. It's to bring all of your data through to join together that single view of customer, that single view of the people who are most important to your success, your customers, so that your salespeople, service people can make the right decision next. Joining the dots, what you know and what you do. As a bit of a side note here, something that's really important then is if we're looking at joining the dots between what we know and what we do, ultimately it's going to come down to our end users. It's going to come down to the people who are making use of that information. We've been working on a design method called Tesseract. Our director of product and design, Kylie Willett, has been working on tweaking human-centered design to make it focused on data, AI, and data architectures for the last decade. And so we're very, very good at it. We've spent a lot of time really deeply thinking about this. But ultimately, it is still human-centered design. It's starting with the people in your organization, finding out what they actually do all day, what's difficult about it, what's easy about it, what would be great if they had access to it, and then finding out what data you have access to. So, for example, in some of the financial services companies we've worked with in the past, something that people have said is, hey, it's great that our customers are logging onto our website and are checking things out there. But because our website is Google Analytics 4 rather than necessarily a Marketing Cloud or Experience Cloud website, we don't have access to that in our Salesforce environment. Again, that's where your modern data stack is going to come into it. You're going to want to bring all that information through and line it up with that customer. And that's where, if we talk to our end users and really find out what they need to do their job well, that's what actually gets us to the next stage.
Is it fair to say, G, I think, traditional data sciences are great at joining the dots with the data, but this really unpacks it and teaches sort of works with our customers on the why. Like, why are we actually, the why and the what are we trying to do?
You're exactly right. That 100% is it. It really is that we have so much information in a modern organization. I sometimes like to say that a modern business is data. That's what it is. It's multiple chains of data flowing everywhere. And once we know what data needs to go places, data scientists are going to do an amazing job. But sometimes something that is missed is finding out who are the end users? Why do they need the data? What's actually challenging about their day to day? The Lightfold CEO, John Cosgrove, often will say it's the difference between a CRM and a Rolodex, right? It's the ability to be able to call someone up and say, hey, g'day, Mr. Godiva. There's been an overnight movement in the yen, and we think that people in your typical investment pattern seem to be interested in diversifying. That's what you can do when you join the dots between what you know and what you do, as opposed to, oh, g'day. Do you want to invest more with us? That's what you do when you don't have the join the dots.
Yeah, it's really providing that in, the same data and the same information if you're reaching out or if someone's reaching out to you. Yeah, I've even worked on projects where, you can actually use the solution to sit down and transact as well in real time, which is really powerful.
Exactly. Yeah. It's being able to have that conversation. Another phrase that I used but never caught on was information at the speed of conversation. You want to be able to have the information right there in front of you so that when you're talking to somebody, you're able to keep up with everything they're saying. Something that we hear over and over again, and this is not limited to just financial services, but it's for everywhere, is that perhaps someone's raised an issue with your service and they've got a case somewhere sitting against them of them saying, hey, I did this and it didn't work, for example. And then suddenly someone from sales or service gives them a call and says, hey, how are you going? We'd love to talk to you about X, Y, and Z. And they say, well, actually, I've got a case raised. How's that going? If you don't have all the information together, your users, your service personnel, your sales personnel, they're going to run into these moments. And that's part of what the modern data stack can help you solve. Something that we like to talk about again in the modern data stack is this idea of orbital architectures. It's a bit of fun because previously we've always talked about cloud. Cloud has been the thing. I think actually it's not enough anymore. Cloud is a great place to be, but actually we want to get into orbit. And the reason why that makes sense as a way of speaking about it is this concept that data can be huge. You will have heard thrown around this concept of big data. And in financial services, more than many other industries, big data is legitimately a thing, especially if you are in a high trade environment. But big data, potentially terabytes or even petabytes of information about your customers. Big data in orbit doesn't weigh anything. It could be flying around at the speed of, well, I guess the speed of whatever you'd want to have it be, basically. Tens of thousands of kilometers an hour. This data could be flying around in orbit. And so that's where the danger is. Suddenly you've got all this information flowing around everywhere. So if you've got that, what you need to have is then an approach, and this is again where we talk about the modern data stack, where your information is modular, accurate, and rugged. You're able to bring in new data sources quickly. You're able to trust the security and the accuracy of your data. And you're able to trust that small shocks to your data system aren't going to completely unbalance it. And that's that concept of modular, accurate, rugged, orbital.
I think in financial services, G, we see a lot of people have invested in data lakes on top of their, traditional in-house systems.
Yes.
How does this help me action that, and how does that orbital architecture play into that?
It's a really, really good question. One of the challenges, and something that I agree with heavily, is this concept of data lakes turning into data swamps. Effectively, if you don't have a plan for why you're putting data into your data lake, or at least really, really recording what's there and what it is, you will end up with what they call a data swamp. You'll end up with huge amounts of information, but nobody knows what it is or how to use it. This is where that layer comes in. Everything that's being done in a modern data stack is looking at it from the perspective of, I guess, data catalogs, data metadata, so literally data about your data, and looking at it from the end user's perspective. If you can't trace back from an end user to a data catalog to your data lake, why you've got information there, you're going to be running into problems straight away. And that's why this way of thinking about it means that as information is placed into your data lake, you know what it's going to be used for, or you're at least recording everything about it so that in the future people can use it. It's actually a really good question, Reese, because something that we see over and over again is people get interested in AI. They get interested in doing something exciting with their data. And they'll come and they'll talk to us and say, well, we really want to do something, maybe propensity to invest or likelihood to churn or any of these potential ideas. And then we say, great, that sounds really exciting. What kind of data do you have? And they'll say, we've got all of this amazing data about our customers. Wonderful. But here's the problem. Very likely the data they have will be point in time. It'll be, this is everything we know about our customers right now. Useful, but not terribly useful for predictive analytics. What you actually need is everything you know about your customers now, everything you knew about them 5 days ago, everything you knew about them 4 weeks ago, and so on and so forth. And that's something that we can absolutely help with in a modern data stack. When you've got something like, for example, a Snowflake or a Databricks or what have you, data storage in those environments is so inexpensive that we say, collect everything. Yes, collect everything, but don't turn it into a data swamp. The reason why you're going to collect everything is because you know what you're collecting and you know why you're collecting it. So you could collect snapshots, daily snapshots, hourly snapshots of your opportunities, your contacts, your applications for investment, your applications for grants, or whatever it is that your particular brand of financial services is involved in. You're collecting all of that information. Start now, because then in 12 months' time, when you have that brilliant idea of we want to roll out some generative AI, we want to roll out some predictive analytics, you've got the data there and it hasn't cost you the earth to keep it and save it.
Yeah, makes sense.
This one,
Tell me a little bit more about that in more detail, G.
well, here we go. So I'm so glad you asked, Reese. Essentially here, and I won't spend too much time on this because we do get very, very deep in the architecture, but really there are 5 main stages to something that we call the modern data stack. There's data going into it, data staging, warehousing, sending the data out, and then deploying it. Okay, so we've got those 5 big steps. I won't read every single thing on this slide because there's a ton here, but what I will do is give you that high-level view of what each of these sections is talking about. Inbound is really describing how we're getting data from the many, many different data sources that a modern business has into your cloud data warehouse. There are 2 major, I guess, variants of how you get data into a data warehouse. You've effectively got what's known as batch replication or streaming data. Batched is exactly what it sounds like. Every hour or day or whatever cadence you want, the information is turned into a batch in the source environment and then sent into your modern data stack. A streamed set of information is happening every single time something changes in the source system. The kinds of reasons you might have the two. So you might have streamed information for analytics purposes. We don't actually care what's happened every second. We want to know what has happened over the last day. But if you've got something where if this happens, so for example, if somebody clicks on this link on our website, we want to know about that straight away because that means that they're interested in our newest product. That's where some streaming data is going to be very useful. So inbound, think of it 2 ways. Batched data, which is happening maybe once an hour or once a day, and streamed data, which is happening as soon as something changes. You can sometimes have them called, and this is just as a digression, streamed data is sometimes called real time or near real time, and then the other kind is batched. Once you've got that into your data warehouse, you have an environment called a staging environment. And this is really staging. You could think of it exactly the same way as people talk about a lake. The staging environment is your lake environment. It's the information in its most raw form, ready to be used for future workloads. Warehousing, that's where you're storing your transformed data and you're doing the actual transform. To give you an idea of what we mean when we say transform, let's say perhaps you have got a whole bunch of opportunity information and you've got a whole bunch of opportunity line item information. The transformation might be, let's summarize everything in all of these opportunity line items onto a single opportunity record and then assign that to a customer. That's what's going to happen in your data warehouse. It's important, particularly for us to talk about, because once you push out from that layer into, for example, Data Cloud or Salesforce or Sales Cloud, Marketing Cloud, anywhere, you want the transformation to be complete in your data warehouse so that the end users who are getting the information passed to them don't have to worry about anything. It's coming to them in exactly the format they need it to be. Once you've transformed it, then there is outbound. Outbound, there's two major flavors of outbound. Again, there's streamed, so it's heading out as soon as it happens, and then batched, heading out on a cadence. One kind of outbound that's very important is then something that's called reverse ETL. I'm not going to spend ages talking about it, but basically all it is if you've got systems of transaction where you need things happening as soon as something else happens, that's where you're going to have reverse ETL. It's going to pipe it out to an application, send some information to a user, and get them up to speed on whatever it is you're wanting to pass out to them. The last part of the stack is then deployed, and that is where your information is mobilized or activated via predictive models, generative AI, dashboards, calculated insights, anything along those lines. I know I've passed through a huge amount of information, Reese, but prior to the session, you said, "Gee, ask me questions about from a layman's perspective, right?" And so Reese, Salesforce back to front, but I know the modern data stack is maybe a slightly newer space for you. What any questions from you about how this space works or how it applies to Salesforce?
Well, I think one of the more interesting, you touched earlier on Data Cloud and their partnerships and
Yeah.
no copy data. I think that's something in people's mind that I think a lot of people are thinking, oh, that sounds great, but where does that fit in the architecture? How does that work in real life? And,
Yeah.
I think we need to get with different customers and talk about their individual circumstances, but a bit of a summary on that, I think would be a lot of interest.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, look, essentially, I think we've got some material that we will go into in a minute, but realistically, the way that we would answer that kind of question really comes down to an individual company by company use case where we're seeing more and more that virtually every company in the next few years is going to need a chief data officer or a chief AI officer in order to actually implement the solutions to what you've just talked about there, which is to implement how your information is flowing from, again, the vast number of data sources, then into how the business is going to use them. Data cloud is something that, again, I would suggest, and maybe it's a bit of a bold claim, I don't know, but I would suggest that every single Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud user out there, or organization that takes advantage of those products, every single one of them in the next 2 to 3 years is going to have Data Cloud because of the ability for it to act as a seamless way to transition data external from Salesforce into Salesforce. And I think that's going to be pretty huge.
I think it'll play a key role. So say if you've got your legacy system, you've got your data lake with data that's not in another system.
Yeah.
I'm sure even work in an environment where you have different teams using different systems to sell different products. This might sort of harmonize all of them together.
You actually hit the perfect word. Yeah, it's harmonize is the exact word, and it's something that we've seen multiple times before. The concept of a CDP, a customer data platform, really all all that its job is to do is to harmonize all of your data so that you've got it. You've got everybody working from the same songbook.
Yeah,
That harmonization is huge inside the data cloud layer. You're so right.
could be something really basic, right? Like your customer has paid, but in the real world, when you've got different sales teams and using different systems, telling that central finance team that is sometimes not so easy. So
Yes, it can be challenging. You're 100% right. And so having a nice, neat, well codified way to bring all that data together is pretty much a critical focus for any business wanting to really make the best use of their data going forward. Well, all right. So let's talk about what that looks like in practice. So we're going to move now from the more broad conversation about a modern data stack to then what does it unlock for somebody inside the Salesforce environment? So let us say if we zip back to this slide just here, there we go, and we say, great, we've got our data replicated from source systems, we've got it stored and transformed, and then we're bringing it into Salesforce via Data Cloud to make use of it in a bunch of different ways. What does that then look like in practice? The main thing that it's going to unlock for you when it's zooming through Data Cloud that you don't already have the ability to make use of is effectively how I guess efficient your business is going to be with that data. This is a use case that we're looking at here of customer service. So we'll bring things to that space. Customer service is the particular use case. So as data flows through, you've effectively got two axes of how your people are going to interact with your customers. And those two axes are the quality of the interaction and then the cost of the interaction. Down here, you've got self-service, pretty low quality interaction because people are effectively self-service. Bots and chat. So that interaction could be great. It's getting better and better as chatbots get better, but it also costs a little more than a self-service. Up here, then you've got call center where you've got real people talking to real people. Again, it's a pretty good quality of interaction, but that's where you're starting to get the most amount of cost coming in. And then lastly, you've got the white glove side of things where you could think of this here as your premium account managers, for example, and they're going to be talking one-to-one with the account that they manage. If we're bringing data through and we've got huge amount of data flowing into our data cloud environment, what does that actually mean for us? The temptation here is to think of it as, well, we could build better bots, right? We've got all of this data. We can just build a better bot. That's not wrong, but it's also kind of thinking small. If you've got all of this information flowing through, what actually it means is that every part of your customer service environment is going to get cheaper and higher quality. And that effectively is what the data is doing for you in this particular example. You can think of that, though, essentially everywhere across an organization. So in every interaction you're having with a customer, the interactions will be higher value and cheaper overall to have that higher value because you're making use of all of your data. One thing here that I want to talk pretty hugely about, though, is the concept of assisted AI versus autonomous AI. Assisted AI is, or even if I take one more step back, the biggest fear that we all have is we roll out some AI and it proceeds to do some really daft things or say something stupid to a customer or do something that is somehow, racist or something awful and it's outside of our control. The big thing there is then what we talk about as the split between assisted AI and autonomous AI. Assisted AI is something that you can safely roll out to everything in your organization right now. And it's something that we think is incredibly powerful. It's your AI effectively helping your service agents, sales agents, premium account managers, everybody with their day-to-day job. And that's something that, yeah, absolutely fantastic. The autonomous AI is actually something that is becoming pretty much a solved problem and pretty much a safe pair of hands to throw your data at now. The reason why is because of something called retrieval augmented generation. We're not going to spend very much time on it because I want to talk more about how the efficiencies happen. But if you're going to look up anything after this talk, look up data cloud and retrieval augmented generation, because that's what gives a GPT-like entity the context of your business. That's what's going to give it the ability to understand this is how Acme, company Acme, has 20 different policies on how to talk with customers, has hundreds of example cases of how we talk to customers. And that's what's going to then give your GPT, whatever kind of GPT you're using, the context of your business and the ability to speak in the way that your business wants to your customers.
So how do you approach, like when you are talking to customers about, how do you approach the subject of trust, right? It's the most, touchy subject when we go into any customer.
Yeah.
Obviously, the platforms we work at, that's a big milestone in overcoming the trust of where the data is going to go. But how do you talked before about the naughty AI and avoiding that. So what steps do you take, G, when you go into implementing something for a customer to assure the naughty AI doesn't rear its head?
It's a really good question. And honestly, at the moment, because of how retrieval augmented generation works, actually, let me answer it another way. Right now, there are companies out there like OpenAI making, GPT-4 and what have you, who have spent millions and probably billions of dollars training these AIs. And they are already hugely protected against any kind of awful situation ever happening with somebody. That's part of what makes them usable at such a grand scale. So you're already finding a great deal of security there. What then adds to that security is all of the same things you would do with your data in any case, which is securing it at the right level, ensuring that personally identifiable information is not flowing through to that retrieval augmented generation database. So information flowing through to that the AI gets access to is not information that could be at all negatively associated with your customers or could generate even the outside chance of something awful happening. You've got that flowing through. Similarly, you want that flowing down from Salesforce as well into your data cloud environment, because you will have already got a whole bunch of security set up around field access, history objects, and exactly what various chunks of data can be used for. So that's the primary way you've got there. You've got the benefit of a pre-trained large language model that's already got a huge amount of safeguards built in, and then that additional safeguard of your grounded data that you're applying to a retrieval augmented generation database. Does that answer what you were asking, Reese?
Yeah, spot on. Thank you.
Fantastic. So let's zoom through then. We'll head through to through to this next slide here. So effectively, before we were talking about the basic example of just generative AI in general, especially helping with service. There's obviously a huge amount that you can do with generative AI. We've got a couple of things here, for example. So if we look at the first one, personalized experience at scale, this is where a generative AI is going to be happening, is going to be, I do apologize, a mental blank. But yeah, personalized experience at scale. Effectively, that's where a generative AI is going to be looking at everything that you've done with a particular customer, every interaction you've ever had with them, every web link they've ever clicked on, every white paper they've downloaded from your website, and then giving you assisted prompts or even autonomous conversations with that customer, helping them know what to invest in next, or giving them an a piece of breadcrumb along a trail of new marketing, for example. Data science simplified. This is where you've effectively got now a wrapper around some amazing predictive models that you may have built, that you can now query them with some natural language. And again, that's done through RAG, retrieval augmented generation. You feed the LLM, and in this case, via Data Cloud, you feed it all the results of those amazing predictive models you've built, and then it's going to be able to use those as part of its responses to you. So natural language querying of amazing predictive models.
And how easy is it to actually bring and use the LLMs I made in other tech?
Yeah, absolutely. Hugely easy, actually. The way that Salesforce is working through this is actually really impressive. There are, I mean, the one that everybody knows is ChatGPT, right? From OpenAI. And that's everybody's familiar with that one. But there's actually tons of LLMs, large language models out there creating GPTs. And the main difference between them all is going to be the cost in sending it a question. You send it a question, it's going to then run that through all the amazing AI it has and send you back an answer. Some of those, you're going to want to be able to send it a really huge question with a ton of context. So for example, if you're asking a GPT, hey, how should I respond to this email from a customer? You would want to give it all of that feedback from a customer and all of that context of what you've talked about before. You're going to need to send it what's called a lot of tokens. It breaks down a response into tokens. That could be expensive. So you might need a higher powered GPT for that. If it's more of the customer's on the website and they're saying, hey, where do I get information about how to invest in currencies? You don't want to use a high-powered GPT for that. You want to use a very simple GPT that's going to take that simple question and then pass it back again with context from your website saying, go to this link. It's going to help you out with that. So it's very easy to use the right GPT for the right job because of how Salesforce is architecting this. So it's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. Behavior as a service and then continual learning and adaptation. Both of these things are reasonably similar in how we describe them. Effectively, what's going on is over time, you want your GPT, you want your generative AI to learn from all of that great data you're feeding into it. And so that's what the way it's architected inside of Salesforce, for example, will continue doing for you. I wanted to just take a quick break there. The next couple of slides is really looking at very specific ways in which information being passed through Data Cloud could be used in analytics or in predictive modeling. Before we jump into that, do we have any questions from the audience or from yourself, Reese, that we want to answer, or should we just keep powering through?
Look, I think compliance is a really interesting area, G. It's come up quite a lot, and I
Yep.
think this is an area companies we talk to see as like something that can save huge amounts of time. Yeah, so it'd be interesting to get your take on some compliance related examples. If you could
Absolutely.
think of any that are top of mind, and yeah, that'd be great.
And when we're talking about compliance, we're sort of thinking from it maybe from a couple of angles. You've got compliance with regards to, say, regulatory or compliance, and then you've got compliance based on promises made to a customer by the company. I guess that's not necessarily compliance, but which way
Yeah,
are you thinking more about?
and even relating to risk around, what offers you may or may not be able to offer
Ah, I see.
someone as well. So
Yes. The difference between a recommendation and a, hey, this is a cool thing you should read about.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
Absolutely. Well, and so at the risk of harping on about it or mentioning it again, that's something where you're going to want to input several layers of trust and accountability. The first thing you're going to want to layer in there is, do we ever want an AI to be autonomous in a space where we're giving any kind of risk advice or any kind of truly advisory statements around what somebody should invest in or do? And you may say, you know what? No, we're never going to tip over to autonomous AI. We're going to leave it at assisted AI. And that's where you can be very, very safe. At that point, you will be able to ensure you've got a human in the loop at all times, reading through what the generative AI is coming back with, as far as you should be telling this customer about X, Y, and Z. You should mention that it is a notification rather than an advisory, and that's absolutely where a human can still be in the loop. It again, though, is another reason why that retrieval augmented generation, that RAG database inside of Data Cloud is incredibly important, because you can feed into it all of your business's viewpoints around risk profiling, around the kinds of information you want to be advisory versus a notification. And then that way your AI, your GPT, your LLM, is going to be learning the way you want it to work.
Yeah, perfect. So it can really help, be quite selective around how to grow your business as well as.
Exactly. Exactly. Awesome. Well, I've left this slide up just for a little while, just people's eyes to kind of drift over. These are the kinds of things that we see over and over and over again with the companies that we work with in the financial services space. These are things that everybody has to deal with. Everything here can be enhanced via additional data. To give you an example of what that might look like, we'll talk about something that we call the Finance Account 360. Realistically, an account 360 is not a new concept. It's what we call single view of customer. People have been talking about it for a long time. Up until about a year and a half ago, the way that that would be achieved inside of Salesforce is purely through an external data warehouse. So you might have something like a Redshift or a Snowflake or GCP or what have you. And then you'd be bringing information from there into Salesforce via perhaps MuleSoft, or you might bring it in through data pipelines or even CRM analytics. And that's all fine. That's actually a great way to do it. What we have now, though, is we have access to this data cloud layer, which means that all of that work of architecting and orchestrating how data is going to be flowing into Salesforce and living on an object or a data set, suddenly all of that is far easier to figure out and to get working correctly. That's what Data Cloud is going to do for you as the top of your modern data stack. Over here, for example, you're seeing the data then being displayed using CRM Analytics. CRM Analytics, if you're not aware, is an analytics tool that is native to Salesforce. It can be embedded on various account pages or customer pages or wherever you want it to be embedded in your platform. And you can see here, we've got information now of funds under management. We've got information of inflows and outflows. We've got information of what they've been clicking on lately. We've got their NPS tracker. So if we've got some way to get CSAT or NPS from people, we understand how they're feeling about us. We've got then campaign participation. What have they been clicking on out of the emails we've sent them? All of that information is flowing through from the various places in your business that you have it into Data Cloud. And then Data Cloud is then being a unified customer profile for your analytics engine to look at. Now, you don't necessarily need CRM analytics. You could use something else, but this is certainly a fantastic way to do it because of how natively it operates with Data Cloud. What could you else do though? Because of course, the big thing that everybody wants to do is generative AI, and generative AI is amazing. It is sort of science fiction come to life. I want to take us back a little bit though, because we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We've got generative AI, amazing technology, and Data Cloud with its retrieval augmented generation capabilities, incredibly effective at deploying it. But let's not forget that we've had predictive modeling for the last 25, 30 years. And predictive modeling, it's still incredibly powerful. It, in fact, is something that if you have some amazing predictive models built by your data scientist or built by your Salesforce administrator, you could feed that to your generative AI to give it even more information about your customers. But the reason why I want to bring that up now is that inside of Data Cloud, so again, inside of that top layer of your modern data stack where you've got data replication, storage and transformation, and then mobilize and activate. Once you're in that mobilize and activate layer, Data Cloud and your Salesforce environment, you actually have Einstein Studio built in. Data Cloud comes with Einstein Studio, which is pretty amazing. It's a feature that's built into it. And Einstein Studio lets you build out predictive models based on all of that rich data that you're bringing in. You can see here that that rich information is then shown in a couple of different ways. This one here, for example, is risk of customer loss. It's a churn model. It's not a necessarily groundbreaking idea to have a churn model, but it's incredibly useful. So if you don't have one, you definitely look at just implementing it. It's amazingly powerful, especially because you're not just getting the number. If you had that number and one of your salespeople or one of your service people said, there's a 49.4% chance of customer loss. Hooray! What can I do with that, right? I guess call them, have a chat. Importantly, we need to know why the model is thinking that. And that, again, is what Einstein is going to help you with. So, for example, here, this one is saying, look, this customer is currently defined as prospect and service level is silver. So likelihood of them buying something, it's pretty bad. Down the bottom there, they've got how to improve this. Okay, cool. Now, these ones are pretty, I guess, kind of responses of up their service level to platinum or up their service level to gold or contact them. And of course, that is what a model will sometimes tell you. But the important thing here is that you could then tell the model, these are the factors that I want you to tell me about. Don't just tell me whether or not their service level is high. Tell me about the other things that I can influence. So what, for example, marketing material have they been sent? We know because of XYZ model that these marketing materials tend to increase the chance that a customer is going to stick around. Let's send them some of those. And that, again, is what you can do with just even some basic predictive modeling, not even looking at generative AI. What I want to then say, though, is you could then have a generative AI looking at this information and summarizing it for your agents. So you've got a predictive model. The predictive model says, if you do these things, you've got a higher chance of keeping this customer and getting them to invest more. You don't want every agent to have to look at every customer and then synthesize that. Ask the generative AI to do it. Hey, generative AI, tell me, based on this predictive model, what I need to do to enhance my likelihood of selling more to this customer or enticing them to invest. And then suddenly you've got a system that is, well, it's weaponized data.
It's the context to have a really good conversation, right?
Exactly. Ultimately, that's what it's going to come down to, is your ability to speak with the customer on a call and figure out what you can do to help them. So yeah, you're 100% correct.
Cool. Gee, would you mind jumping to the next slide?
Absolutely.
We just want to say, thank you so much for all of our attendees today. It's been a great session. G, thank you for your time. It's always good to have a chat and
my pleasure.
Hear what you're hearing out there, and work with you and your experience. Anyone that has joined, it'd be great to see you at some of our other sessions. Workfest, we call it the Festival of the Mind here at CloudWorks. We'd love you to jump in and interact with us more. But yeah, essentially that is all we have today. So we just wanted to say thank you, and we hope you've had a good time and enjoyed some of the content that G has run through.
Thank you so much, folks. I really appreciate the time to get a chance to talk to you all.